Professor, our Energy Minister Chris Bowen says that wind and solar are free, but you've done some research into the cost that nature herself is paying for windmills and solar panels. What are they?
Well, wind and solar are not free. The capital cost is large. The second thing is that the amount of carbon dioxide used in manufacturing them is more than they'll ever save. The third thing is the amount of energy used to make them is more than they'll ever create. And they're certainly not free for the consumer because the consumer is having to pay increased electricity costs. And if they were free, we wouldn't have the relationship we see now. And that is the more wind and solar we put in, the higher your electricity bill. Now, wind and solar are renewable. The only thing that's renewable about it are the subsidies. And these subsidies just keep coming. And you, the taxpayer, keep paying these subsidies. And that's because governments are too frightened to bite the bullet and say this is very old technology. This old technology has to be supported because it's financially unviable. So the argument that Chris Bowen puts up about it being free is just wrong. We all know that nothing is free in today's world.
Indeed. One thing I'm mystified about is that they want to stick windmills offshore, where they are more difficult to build out there. They present a hazard to shipping and shed toxic microparticles that kill marine life. Now, you're probably well familiar with the proposed forest of windmills that they are going to build off East Gippsland in Victoria. Are there any benefits at all to windmills, let alone ones offshore?
Well, the benefits are to those who are getting the subsidies and making a lot of money by increasing electricity prices. And the benefits are they have fewer community concerns. People with land nearby wind turbines have very valid complaints, and these complaints are about the noise. These complaints are about the microparticles, as you've mentioned, that are released from the wind turbine blades. These release a chemical called bisphenol A. It is highly toxic. It's banned in most countries, and that's from abrasion of the blades. When these blades are finished, they are cut up and dumped as landfill. You cannot recycle the blades. The bisphenol A leaks out of the blades and gets into the soils and the water. So people on the land are quite justifiably concerned about having these dirty, monstrous big wind turbines nearby, slicing and dicing the bats and the birds. Now, if you were an environmentalist, you could not support these things. They spoil the scenery and they kill wildlife. But if you put them offshore, you can't see the killed wildlife that's underneath them. They just drop into the sea. The bisphenol A gets spread by currents over a very, very wide area. And we do know from the east coast of the US that we have an increased number of wild deaths, probably due to offshore wind turbines. Now, these offshore wind turbines that we've got in Denmark and England, we know they have a very much of a shorter life. That's because of the very aggressive saline water that attacks them, and they are just left there. So it's not a good idea. The only reason that these things are being pushed is that there's a quid to be made. And those who are owning and operating these turbines and solar complexes are not concerned about cheap electricity. They're not concerned about the beauty of our countryside. They're not concerned about the wildlife. They're not concerned about the cost that the taxpayer has to bear for these. All they want is to make a profit. And there's nothing wrong with that, but the government has been silly enough to create opportunities for people to make a profit by destroying tried and proven power stations that are still operating. We are killing off power stations that are still operating, and we're not replacing them with a station that's operating 24/7. So this is purely a commercial deal for the wind and the solar operators who are mostly overseas companies.